Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we've got Tiff Janzen. Tiff, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you on the show. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're using a lot of tech that I am kind of familiar with, but don't get too many opportunities to work with. So I'm really excited to dig a little bit deeper. But before we talk about that, let's talk about you. For folks who haven't heard of you before, do you want to give us a bit of a background on yourself?
Sure, it sounds great. So a little bit about myself. I started as a software developer about 6 years ago now. Worked at both startups, big companies, and after that transitioned into a DevRel role where I am now at Stackbit. And then on the side, I run a community called Tiff and Tech where I create videos, mainly video content around how to break into tech, some small kind of coding videos, and just connect with the community. That's what I love to do. So I'm happy to be here today.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So I guess let's maybe let a little bit of the premise in, and then we can talk about the specifics. So
Mhm.
we are talking today about how to build visual editing into a website. And so visual editing is not something that is all that new. We've had visual editing for a long time in different platforms, but I think it's a little stigmatized because I think that a lot of times when devs think about visual editing, they start thinking about WYSIWYG editors. What you see is what you get. And for those of us who have tried to use those as part of a development flow, they tend to come with a lot of pitfalls and caveats, and it's kind of like learning a whole new programming language because of how complex they can become. So is that like, would you call what we're doing today WYSIWYG editing?
That's a good question. And it's such a good point. I'm glad you brought that up too, because it is definitely um, a stereotype or any kind of tool that it falls into, maybe not necessarily falls into, but even touches the low code kind of area. Developers go, not for me. And I get it. Because, a lot of times it's one of those things where your mind goes to similar to what you just said. There's going to be so much restrictions. I'm not going to be able to use what tech I want. And we see this oftentimes too when you're working on a team, or this is where I've experienced a lot when you're working on a team and you need a tool that you can work with for both non-technical but also technical people, meaning you're a content-driven, very heavy content-driven website, which I
Hmm.
mean, what website really isn't nowadays? And you need to find this tool. So what happens is you end up kind of meeting in the middle and settling. The marketers want to use a specific tool, or content editors, and then you have your engineers over here who are like, not this tool. So you meet in the middle and find a tool that everyone kind of is okay with. And to go back to your question, where it's definitely, when we dive into Stackbit, it's the complete opposite in that sense. Stackbit, first of all, doesn't touch your production stack, which I think is amazing. It
Mm.
also, too, you can work with whatever tech you want. You can bring in whether you want to work with, say, like today, we're going to be working with Next.js and Contentful for the headless CMS, but you can say work with if you want to bring in with React, or if you want to bring in with Svelte, or there's tons of different examples we have on our site as well. And it really is there to, I like to say that everyone can work in their own environment then. So
Hmm.
for me, what drew me to Stackbit initially is because of this exact problem of uh, you know, having tools that kind of just met in the middle and didn't really make anyone happy. And in turn, what typically happens as an engineer is the marketing or content editors end up coming to you to make these changes, right?
Right.
And your heads down in a feature, you're focused in on it, and as you know, when you're in the middle of coding something, the worst thing that can happen is getting pulled out of the zone, right? And
Hmm.
a lot of times, what happens to make these small changes, and although there's small changes maybe for the content that need to be updated, it takes up a lot of time, and then you have to get back in the zone. So, yeah, I'm really excited about that's what really drew me to Stackbit and this tool.
That's very cool. And so like the way that I've always sort of thought about this is I have a lot of like I've tried to set up clients or coworkers with
Mhm.
easy, and I'm always going to have to air quote easy, ways to
Mhm.
manage websites a bunch of times before. And so the earliest version I can think of is I tried to make my own little content management system early in the day before I realized that you shouldn't do that. And so I built a little CMS and I gave it to some of my clients. And then I found that one, it was never flexible enough. They always wanted to do something that I hadn't built yet. And two, it just required a ton of maintenance. Like I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, oh, why did it break when they copy pasted this into it? Or why did it break when they put this kind of image and not that kind of image? And it was just always little headaches that kept me from doing things that I wanted to do. And it was always sort of putting me in firefighting mode. From there, I went to WordPress because WordPress at least was way more flexible, and I still think that WordPress is kind of, if you want to start standing up ways to let people that aren't developers manage content, WordPress is still one of the top contenders in the space because they did an excellent job of it. And then over years, I got out of the PHP game. I started working on stuff like I went to Gatsby and the later at Netlify, and that led me to a lot of headless CMSs. So stuff like Contentful and Sanity and others. And whenever you get into this space, I'm like, okay, well, maybe for an easy site, I should put somebody toward, I don't know, Webflow. Maybe I should put them toward Wix or somebody in the chat is saying flashbacks to Dreamweaver. And maybe that would be the right way to do it. But what I always found is that was a trade-off that was so expensive to come back from, because once you put it into Webflow, it's like not an easy thing to pull it out of Webflow if you decide you need a more complicated use case or whatever. And I'm sure that the Webflow team would probably tell me why I'm wrong in that statement, because I haven't looked at it in years. But the experience that I've had, at least, is like when you go all in on a visual editor, you tend to be like all in on that visual editor. And one of the things that I found when I was at IBM is I was trying to find a way to let our docs team, our content management team, people who were fully capable of writing Markdown or doing some HTML if they needed to, but really they just didn't want to. Like it slowed them down. It took them out of their flow. So they wanted a way to do content editing. And I found what you said about like there being a compromise where you meet in the middle and nobody's happy. I actually found it to be a little bit different, where whoever was at the top of the reporting chain got to dictate how everybody else suffered. So in a company that's led by engineers, they'll say, well, just use Markdown. And then all the folks who don't want to write Markdown are like, but I don't like Markdown. I just want to be able to copy paste from Microsoft Word. And the engineers are kind of like, well, too bad. That's how it works. Get into GitHub, open a pull request. And they're like, I don't know what a pull request is. It's like, whatever, figure it out. Or you get a company where the head of the company or the head of the team is a marketing exec, a copywriter, something like that. And they say, engineers, I don't care that you don't want to work in this Byzantine WYSIWYG editor. Figure it out. And so now you've got these teams having to like climb in and do these weird workarounds to try to shoehorn code into the WYSIWYG in a way that the marketing team won't accidentally delete or edit when they're trying to mess things around. And so what I'm cautiously optimistic about, as I hear you describe Stackbit, is it sounds like this is a little bit of a way for everybody to have their cake and eat it too. Because what I'm understanding from the engineering standpoint is you mentioned two things that I want to dig into. One is you said it never touches your production stack. I really want to hear more about that. And two, you mentioned that you can use it with Next or Svelte or React. So that's probably the easiest one to answer. So I'll ask that first. How flexible is Stackbit? Like, can I plug it into plain old HTML and CSS, or does it need to be a framework?
So essentially with Stackbit, it's flexible enough to work with any site framework that can be run using a node-based development server. So
Okay.
I mentioned we're going to be using Next. I mentioned Svelte. A ton of other ones too that I'm blanking on right now.
Is something like Vite, would
Yeah,
Vite work? So, because like Vite would give me a plain HTML site that's being served by Vite. I guess I'm curious where's the delineation, right? Like, does it need to be something that runs through like a Babel or a Vite parser for like bundling, or is it just like as long as a node server is running, Stackbit can go?
As long as a node server is running, Stackbit can go. We usually
cool.
for a lot.
Okay.
For a lot of examples, I use Next.js and Contentful, and I think, we definitely are trying to work with other examples too. And in the docs there are those examples, but I think the reason that even for today that we're using Next.js and Contentful is it's just kind of our go-to, and then also too, there's no additional customization needed or anything. It's just kind of out of the box, ready to go.
Yeah, it is always kind of nice when you can just plug something in and not have to think about it anymore. Okay, so then the second part of that question was, I asked two things. The first one was about the flexibility and what you could use in the stack, and then the second one was not touching the production stack. So can you say more about what that means? Because in my own mind, what I'm imagining is that in order to use an editor of any kind, like, it has to be part of the production stack. So how is Stackbit different? How is it managing that?
So what it is when you install, and we'll go through this, when you install the Stackbit CLI, it's essentially a site preview you see when you're working with it. So it's just essentially your site that's running in the development server. And it's during this time, it's the only time that Stackbit is necessary to interact with your code. So anything else that we require in the code can be stripped out for production. So for example, say you're making these changes, and we'll go through this step by step and kind of cover through it as we go. I think it's a good way to visually see what is happening and why it's not needed. But say we've installed the CLI, we've got the visual editor up and running, and for the development part, it's in a good place. So then what we do is we push our changes to GitHub, to your repo. From there, in Stackbit, well, you'll take take that repo, and you can go into Stackbit, into your portfolio then, and put the URL there. And what that will do is it will spin up a cloud version of that project, essentially. So then your marketers can go in with this URL, modify it, change it, all the content and whatnot, which is directly reflected back in this case, Contentful.
Okay, very cool. Very, very cool. All right, great. So I feel like all my other questions, I'm going to say, like, how does this work? And you're going to say, well, I need to show you code. So maybe it makes sense to switch over and start looking at some code here. So let me push that button and we'll head over there. Where the heck did there it is.
Actually, Jason, too, one thing you mentioned is that I wanted to touch on is you mentioned that, two side notes. We have this very similar history. You mentioned you started in PHP, I believe. I did as well. And you worked at IBM. I did as well. So
wait, okay, we got to go for the trifecta. Were you also a musician?
No.
Ooh, almost 2 for 3.
We both do video content, so we could count that as something.
Exactly. We're basically the same person, is what we've just discovered.
Exactly. And I wanted to say, though, so you kind of touched on a little bit cost, storing your content in a headless CMS. It can get expensive pretty quickly. And I was talking to actually our solutions engineer, Joe, recently, who's been playing around with this demo. And we're going to be sharing more about it on Stackbit shortly here too. But playing around with this idea of separating your content sources and how that can, really impact your from the many different things, but also too from a financial standpoint. So using your headless CMS to store content that is the layer. So all the content. Hello?
It looks like we're having some connection issues. Is that, I think I'm looking at the stream and it's looking like it's coming from crap. Okay. Let's see how this goes. Everybody just breathe.
Wait, it might be.
Okay, are you back?
I feel like I'm getting back.
I feel like you're getting back. It's still a little bit choppy, but we're getting audio. That's always good.
Getting better. We're slowly improving.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes. Okay. All right. So you were in the middle of making a point when we lost you. You were talking about the
All right, perfect.
storing
Hear my
content in
audio?
different places.
Can you hear my audio now, Jason?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'll continue, but if you stop hearing me, just let me know. So yeah, storing content in different places. So for this example that we were walking through, he was separating the presentation layer from the data layer of content. So a lot of times what ends up happening is when you're using a headless CMS, your presentation layer is tightly coupled to your data layer, meaning that the content you're storing, you're also defining maybe some of the styling properties there and whatnot. What this does, though, is if you want to reuse that content, which we often do, you have to, it's already tied to that specific styling and whatnot. So then to actually reuse it, you're going to have to either store it in a different space, depending on if it's for a different website, or duplicate it essentially, which, can get very expensive very quickly. So what we were playing around with and really talking about is this idea of storing presentation layer. In this example we do, it's with JSON files.
Oh,
And so it's
interesting.
just your presentation layer. That's where you define your and define the components that are going to be the content references and the components that are using this content. And what this does is it allows you to scale, and it's much more. One thing it does is it's much more cost effective, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then with this architecture of having your content stored like the missing link really is, it still goes back to how are your editors then, or your marketers going to be able to work with this now that it's stored in two places. So it solves a big problem, but it also creates a new one. And then of course, we bring in Stackbit, that missing link here. So it's able to, solve that problem of allowing your content editors to just work directly within the visual editor with multiple content sources. So just wanted to touch on that because I think, when it comes to pricing, it really solves.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that also can solve, like, one of the things I found is that I really like the way that different content solutions handle different things. Like I'm a really big fan of, I'm not going to name names to not get into a thing, but if, there's one that is maybe great for like long form written content, and there's one that's maybe great for custom data types where you want structured data. And other times, like you said, all you really need is a JSON blob because you're just trying to list out your categories, and you don't need like a custom headless CMS to put an array of 15 categories together, right? Like that can be JSON. So being able to pull those different things together and edit them all through one interface, because Stackbit can do that, that's pretty compelling. So okay, great. So then I think now I just want to start playing with it. So I'm going to move us over into the pair programming view here. And why don't we get a window up, if I can find my windows. We're going to bring this one over here. And first and foremost, let me do a quick shout out to our live captioning. So we've got Rachel here with us from White Coat Captioning today. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being here. There is a closed caption button right on your video player in Twitch, so you can see those there. That is made possible through the generous support of our sponsors. We've got Netlify, NX, New Relic, and Pluralsight, all kicking in to make this show so much more accessible to so many more people, which I very, very much appreciate. We are talking today to Tiff. Where's the right place to? You said you're not on Twitter, so where should I send people if they want to keep up with you?
For sure. I would say all other social platforms. I am Tiff in Tech, so YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok.
Here's
and
Instagram.
I do have Twitter. I'm not.
You're just not using it.
What I am, why I'm not. Yeah, I feel like though it's such a a dev thing to be using it, and I'm really lacking.
I don't think it. I've never once thought about Twitter as being like a requirement. It's honestly, it's one of those things that I wish I didn't do. Oh, gotta pause that so it doesn't make noise.
What it is, it's a scary place.
Okay. All right. Okay. Are we good? Yes. All right. And so then we're talking about
Good. Jason,
Stackbit.
am I still thinking a little bit?
You are still lagging a little bit. I apologize if I'm talking over the top of you. How are we doing now?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Okay. So I have the Stackbit website up. I've dropped a link to that, and that is the extent of what I know here. So what should I do first to get this project running?
Perfect. Amazing. Well, let's start by cloning this project. So do you want me to I know I sent it to you in an email, but do you want me to send it to you in the chat, or what's best?
Let me see. I don't know if I have the repo. I have the Contentful space.
Okay, give me a sec here, and I will send it to you.
We have a chat window here in the video thing.
Perfect. Give me a sec. Everything's moving slower now to stream live, so just give me a minute here.
Cursed by the streaming gods today.
Oh, I know. Okay, let me see. It might be. I know I have it in my email, but it's just loading here. While it's loading, Jason, I'll tell you a little bit about the project that we're working on today. So it was built by Sean, who is our developer experience engineer, and we wanted to build a project that was kind of something that you can put your shoes into, as far as something that we all kind of navigate through. So it's a doc site that, and I know one of the big things oftentimes that as developers we dislike doing is keeping up-to-date documentation, or maybe it's just me, but he built this doc site, and the purpose of it is to really go through what it would be like when you are onboarding at a new company, whether you are, say, a technical writer, or maybe you're a developer as well, and you need to start making updates into this documentation. Now, obviously, if you're a developer, you can just run it locally and, make changes that way. But even then, it kind of goes back to what you were honing in on earlier, where it's like, whether you're a technical writer or content editor or even developer, some of these things shouldn't require you to completely, spin up your development server to, then go into your headless CMS to find these changes, then flip back and forth to see them, and then push. Time should be spent elsewhere, even if you have the ability to do so. So give me a second here. Let's see if it loaded. Perfect. All righty. Listen. Okay.
All right. So we've got.
All right, and I can just drop it in the chat. Jason, is okay?
You can. Yeah, that's totally fine. All right. So I'm grabbing this
just
link
sent
here.
It there.
All right.
Yeah,
so
and then
this
wherever
is
you want to put it, you can just
leave me alone. Oh, GitHub, so secure. Okay, so I've got this here. In fact, I can look at this cool thing. They have the GitHub CLI set up to just do this for me. So I'm going to move into. Actually, no. Here's what I'll do. I'm going to clone this, and then I'm going to fork it. Failed to fork. What? Oh, I'm not in the thing. That would make sense. So we're moving into the doc site example, and then I'm going to fork this one.
Perfect.
Oh, it forked into my personal. That's fine. Whatever. So this then gives us. Let's take a look. I have a next site, it looks like. So we're looking at next. We've got Next with React, and then some Contentful stuff. Okay. And it looks like
Exactly.
this is
Right now, this so far.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Jason. So far, there's no use of Stackbit. I'll let you know when we start integration with Stackbit, but this is literally just cloning a Next.js project that has Contentful in it already as well, but nothing related to Stackbit here. It's just, you can think of it as when we're going through the example of you're onboarding to a new company or a new project and they send you the repository, you clone it, and we want to get it running locally. So I'm just looking at your screen here. So then we can just run npm install. And then the next step, we will add some environment tokens that I sent you. And once again, this isn't Stackbit related. We're adding in environment tokens for Contentful.
Got it.
So I can add those.
Okay, so I'm going to...
And maybe just rename that to
m.local is what I want, right?
just .env even. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll do the .env. I'm going to pull this part off screen because it's got some sensitive details in it. And you so kindly sent those to me beforehand so that I don't have to do it myself. Okay, so I've got that set. This .env is now created and it's got these values in it. And so now, am I able to start the server?
npm install, maybe I missed it.
I did run an npm install, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so just run npm run dev, just start the server up.
Okay.
Perfect. You can open it up.
All right, so that is running in localhost 3000. So I will head over to our browser here and fire up 3000. And here is our Acme
So right
Corp.
now we've, done nothing. So yeah, right now we've done nothing new that we're not all familiar with, or most of us aren't all familiar with, in the sense of, just cloning a project, installing its dependencies and running it locally. So this could be any project that you want to work with, as we kind of spoke about before. I always name everything Acme Corp, but I know it's from a movie or somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it is, but if anyone knows exactly where it is, leave it in the chat. But yeah, so this is just, a doc site, an example doc site, and the content is coming from Contentful. So I'll get you to log into Contentful with the email address that I sent the invite to. So think of this as, going back to our example, you're joining a company.
We got you frozen. Let me get logged into Contentful while we hope that you come back. Oh, no, I'm going to have to sign up with, let's see. This one. Okay, so here's our Acme Corp. And let's see, Tiff has dropped, so I'm going to poke around in here for a minute while hopefully she rejoins. Yes, chat, this is Arc browser. It is Mac only, and I like it very much. I have a couple invites if folks want them. You can just send me a whisper or DM on Twitter or something. And okay, so we've got content. We've got our 54 entries in here, which I'm very glad that this was set up beforehand, because one of the things that we always fall victim to on this show is starting with something that's completely empty, and then we spend like half the show doing dummy content. Tiff, you're back.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Can hear you, yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I just kind of caught the last bit of that, but yes, so came prepared with the content already in place. And so yeah, this is where the content is coming from. And I want to highlight here some different workflows. So actually, if you go back to your localhost 3000, and we'll get into Stackbit right after this, but this is just really important, I think, because it does a good the differences, the differences of workflows with and without Stackbit, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So if you scroll down a little bit to the card section here, where it says Docs section on the homepage, you can see there's a card grid there. And in our code base, it's just a simple component that's rendering the content that is coming from Contentful. There's no for that. Otherwise, it's in, if you go to
Be like
card, if you
components.
search up card grid, it will be there.
Yeah. So we get our
And then
card
the individual
grid.
cards. So pretty simple.
Okay.
Coming from card, exactly. So, but what I want to kind of touch on here is, say you come into this doc site and you are either even if you're a developer, technical writer, whomever you are, and you want to change the order of these cards. So in order to do that, actually, it's not right now through the code that you would have to do it. You'd have to go into Contentful, and what you'd have to do is really search for this. So once again, I'm leading you through this because I know where all of this is, but just imagine you're onboarding to a new company, and you're trying to work through this. So right now, if you go to where it says any next to content type, if you change that to, or if we filter by slug even, sorry, it's just a little tiny for me.
I see an option for card grid.
Go to
That looks
page.
promising. Go to page. Okay.
Yeah, you could do, okay, page, and then you could try card grid too, though, but let's just do it this way for now. And then go filter by slug. Like, let's just try and get to the home page.
And slug for homepage, is that just home? There are no filters matching home.
Oh, sorry, just slash, just a back.
Slash.
No, just backslash. Yeah. Reference it.
Okay. So I see the welcome. This looks like the homepage.
Okay, click on that one.
Okay. And then scrolling
if you scroll down
here,
a bit,
card grid.
You can see your card grid, which is embedded, in the home page. Click on card grid, and then this is where these 3 card sections are coming from. So something as simple as you want to arrange the order of the content. We have to, flip back and forth from our local host, which we have to have the code running locally, like spin that up. Then we have to go into a different platform, headless CMS, and then kind of sift through to find this. And this, once again, is a very small example. As I'm sure you've seen when you're working with headless CMS, is the number of content that is stored in them gets hectic quickly. So if we wanted to change these card orders, you could simply drag them around. It's fine if you want to or not, but I just wanted to hone in on that before we go through using it with Stackbit. You might have to publish it as well if it didn't change. Yeah, publish changes.
All right, I think
back in Contentful.
I think in dev it's pulling the drafts. I was curious if that was going to be the case, and so this is it takes a second, but it did work, which is pretty. I mean that is already pretty nice that this is set up to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know if it's supposed to do that, but because it was taking a sec, I didn't know if something silly was going on. So that's great. We'll give it a sec here. Okay. So you can see, though, this is just kind of one small example that I wanted to highlight before we really dive into it, because I think it does a great job on a very small scale of just showing how tedious this can be. And and once again, I know I'm repeating myself. This, you have to keep in mind, is someone that has to be decently technical to do this, or at least be trained to do this, as far as like cloning the repo goes, and things that can go wrong. So,
right,
that's really where Stackbit comes in to start.
Looks like we're losing you again. We might maybe try just turning your video off for now, and we'll see if we can get a better audio signal. Oh, that immediately sounded promising.
Hey, Jason, can you
how's
hear
this?
me?
Yeah, yeah, okay. Let's just
This
we'll
is good
roll
on.
on that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
All
thanks
right,
everybody
perfect.
for sticking with us. Oh, and the chat says that Acme is from Looney Tunes,
Mhm.
Coyote and Roadrunner, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and all that good stuff.
Amazing. That's cool. Okay, that's from my childhood. So thank you for letting me know.
All right, so I'm ready
all right,
now.
so
We've
let's
got.
go back.
It
Perfect.
looks
So open up a second terminal.
okay.
You can keep your dev server running. And then you're in the project, you type in npm install -g at stackbit/CLI.
Okay.
And there's a few different commands that this gives us. For today, we're going to be going through the main one, stackbit dev, but there's a lot of different customizations that depending on your project and whatnot, you can dive into. But perfect. Okay.
Oops. So we're using 0.2.84 today, and I'm ready.
Perfect. Yep. The latest version. All right. So now all I want you to do, this is literally, I just want to hone in on this and remind everyone who's watching up to this point, nothing was Stackbit related. It's very, standard what you do to start up a project, right? So now we've installed the CLI, and then I just want you to simply run Stackbit dev while your development server is still running.
Okay.
And then from there, this creates a URL.
Forwarding request to localhost 3000.
Yeah.
We've got an underscore Stackbit is
Localhost
running.
80. Yep.
Should I open this?
Yes, exactly. So click on this. Yep.
Okay, so a few things
so
that I'm seeing right out of the gate. Here's our site. It's got some info about Stackbit, and then a bunch of controls that you're going to have to explain to me.
And before I even do that, I want to explain a little bit about, because for me, I was like, okay, what is really going on here? Like, let's take a step back and kind of dive into it a little bit. So we have our dev server running on 3000 still, which we need to do when we run Stackbit dev, which we did. What is happening is you can see, in the URL, not now on the browser, but that was given to us in the terminal. It was localhost 8090. And so what we are doing is we are essentially proxying traffic to your dev server. So, to your localhost 3000. And this is configurable as well. But for this, we'll just stick with 3000. And what we are doing is we're adding a client-side script to the proxied site, which handles content editing capabilities that's embedded in the site. So we can try looking now. If you go inspect on the site.
Inspect, like this?
Just click on, and then go to and then go to your network tab. Yes, and you can see here the script running. So it's looking for content changes every second, essentially. So any changes that are made in Contentful, this is how we know. So just to give a bit of insight as to what is going on behind the scenes, I guess you could say. And then going back, and we have up here this kind of suggestion, which I really love, of Stackbit config file is missing, which we will add in a second here. But first, to kind of talk a little bit about what is going on, the side panel to the left, there's some functions or features, I should say, that come right out of the box. So if you click on some of them there, you can see there is content, for example, which right now, if you click on it, it will be empty because we still have to add our config file, which will enable Stackbit to talk to Contentful, and then there'll be content from Contentful there. And then if you go down one to component presets, same thing. So, but right out of the box, we can see we are already starting to get the shell of what is happening. And this is literally, then this also too is a newer feature that we have where you can add in different buttons and links, so say to docs or other things like that. So, and you can see in the top left-hand corner, we are still working locally. It's just a nice way to show that. So let's go ahead and add in the Stackbit config file. That's the last step for Stackbit, actually, that is required. So literally for Stackbit, all we have done thus far is install
the CLI, really.
Install it, and then also too, we're going to install the CLI. Oh, we're going to install 2 more dev dependencies first, actually. So you can stop either one of the yeah, you can just stop that right there. It's fine. And then we're going to install 2 dev dependencies, once again, because Stackbit isn't touching our production site. So it's going to be at stackbit/types.
Okay. Oops. Meant to hit space,
and
hit enter.
Then, and then we're going to do the same thing, but at stackbit/cms-contentful. And then these are 2 packages that for types, it's because we are working with TypeScript, so it just gives us some more features there. And then with Contentful, because we are working with Contentful.
And is there, if I wanted to look at like a list of all of your compatible CMSs, is there one, can we like just go look? Because someone asked, is this like Sanity? And it's not, because Sanity is a standalone headless CMS. And this is like, you're using Stackbit as a layer on top of a different headless CMS, which is pretty dang cool. So yeah, here it's Contentful, Markdown, Dado, don't know that one. That's Sanity there. Nux, React, Angular, Next, Svelte. Like, that's pretty dang cool that these can all be plugged together like that. Okay, sorry. That was my little detour because of the chat.
No, and I'm going to add to that detour because, and I'll, for those who are interested in it with what can be used with Stackbit, one thing we actually did a while back was, so it can be used with any structured content source. So we talk a lot about headless CMSs with Stackbit, but this could be, you could use a database, you could use any API that has structured content, essentially. One thing that, once again, our solutions engineer Joe did, he always makes the coolest projects, is he used Figma's API with Stackbit. So that was pretty yeah. So there's like, you can get pretty, and that's really interesting too, because then the designers, you can set up a lot of guardrails or specifications, and it just becomes this whole other environment, which is amazing. But I won't derail too far off of that, but just to kind of hone in on the content sources.
Yeah, I mean, that
so let's
stuff
go
is
back
really
to
cool.
VS Code and create this new.
Back
oh
to
yeah,
VS Code.
It is. I know, and we have examples. Yes, back in VS Code, let's create a config file just in your parent. Perfect. Yeah, and we'll call this file stackbit.config.ts.
Okay.
Perfect. And then from here, we're going to import the 2 dependencies that we just installed. So import curly brackets, contentful content source, all capital C's, content source. And it's actually not camel case. The first C as well is capital. And then from at Stackbit CMS Contentful. Yep.
Okay.
And then we're going to import one more thing, which is import curly brackets. This is camel case. It's at stackbit/types.
And then let's see if it's going to give me my autocomplete here.
And it's come on. It's lowercase d define. There we
Define
go.
Stackbit config.
Define Stackbit config.
All right.
Yeah. And then yes, exactly. So those are the two dependencies we need to import. So now we're going to export this config file and go, so we can go export default, define Stackbit config. And then inside of there, let's put oh yeah, you're already ahead of me. Sorry, it's lagging a second here. Then we're gonna give Stackbit some information. So let's do Stackbit version. So it's camel case, so lowercase s.
Okay.
Stackbit version, and then we are going to do single quotes, and then I always pronounce this wrong, the tilde, the wave. That's what I think should be called, but the tilde sign. 0.60.
Okay.
Okay. And then if you, go SSG name, camel case, and we're using Next.js.
Okay.
And then we're going to do content sources camel case, third one down. And we're going to put this in an array. And then we're going to do new contentful content source.
Okay.
And then from there, curly brackets inside. And we're going to now what we're going to do is essentially tell Stackbit a bit of information about the contentful space and organization that we're using. So first one we are going to do is space ID. So third one down.
And that's going to be
and then
out of our
that's going to be our content out of our .env file.
Yeah, so I can copy paste these across. And then what was the other one we needed? We have
and then do the same for environment.
Okay. And was that contentful environment?
Contentful _ environment.
Okay.
And then go preview token.
Okay.
And do same thing, content. Yes, perfect. And then maybe do, because we're using TypeScript, let's do exclamation mark after each of these, because I see it's giving you a little bit of a headache. Just so telling it that it will exist. We don't have to worry about it being undefined for, oh no, sorry, after the ID, after contentful space ID.
You know, I've never done that in TypeScript before.
Yeah, and just,
now
I haven't either until I joined Stackbit.
Undefined.
And then what does it say here?
Space ID environment preview token.
Space ID
is not assignable. I think it's missing an access token is why it's mad. Is my guess.
Try, yeah.
And then that's this one here.
And then contentful. Okay, perfect.
And you're mad because it's
wait, you know what? No, Jason, actually, so instead of contentful access token, I changed the name in the tokens I sent you. So do contentful management token. It's different than the one you just copied, actually. Yeah, I
see that in the copy paste.
And I changed the name.
Okay. So now it's happy because it's got all the required fields.
Oh, do exclamation mark on line 10 as well at the end of environment.
Okay.
Okay. Give that a save.
Oh, wait. Is it like export const config?
Oh, export default. Export default. Yeah, we can do, or just export default even.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, it's happy. Now, perfect. So to kind of talk a little bit about this config file a bit more, as I mentioned, this is telling Stackbit a little bit of information about the content source we are using. So in this case, giving it some environment tokens and whatnot. And this is what having this config file now is what will enable two-way sync. And we'll go through that. I think I'm a visual learner, so then when I speak about things, I'm always like, we'll go through it and see it, because it's just the easiest way to learn for me, I guess. But yeah, so it enables two-way sync, and let's start Stackbit Dev again. But I just want to highlight here too, Jason, if we had Stackbit Dev running already, and say we stopped our local development server instead of Stackbit Dev, and then we restarted that one. One thing that's really cool is it doesn't. We don't need to typically refresh the page. So if you go to localhost 8090 now, are we getting? Let's see.
Did it start? Let me.
Perfect. Okay, this is what we want.
You have.
No,
oh yeah,
it should be good to go, because now we have. Yeah, so and this isn't like a warning per se, it's more so just help. I find it really helpful. I mean, you can X out of it, but it's just really helpful next steps. So as you can see now, we have our content that is coming in from Contentful. We could even do something where it's like, let's go to, maybe, change something like the title in the card grid, or you can change any kind of content here. Whether it be home section grid, you can put hello world or anything like that. And then just click out of it, wait for it to load there. And if we exit out and we go down, where is that home section grid exclamation
That one
mark
might not
being
actually
used
have.
is the question.
I don't think that one's
You know what,
actually
Jason,
being
maybe
used.
let's go back there and then go to heading. Is getting started. Yeah, getting started's used, or
yeah. Okay, we'll add a little exclamation point on that one. Here's the thingy telling me it's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And look.
Perfect.
So, okay.
And
so
so
right
this
out
is,
of the
yeah,
gate, this is really impressive, because what just changed is that for me as a developer, instead of now having to have both the site open for dev and Contentful open for dev, I now have it all in one place. So as I'm making my changes here, I can change code and see the code change, and I can change content and see it update right over here. Right. And that is really, really cool. And I feel like we're just barely scratching the surface here. Oh, good question from the chat.
I know it's something that like you're.
So the question is, if another user changes content, does it live update here too?
Okay, yes, not right. Okay, sorry, let's take a step back. Yes, it does. Great question. But right now, as we are setting this up, this URL is unique to your machine. So right now, because we're in setup phase, it's unique to your machine. But as I kind of alluded to at the beginning, which I'll go more in, I'll speak more about at the end once we're done this process, is once we push our changes to GitHub, and then we take that repo and we input it into the, in your dashboard in Stackbit, put in that repository, essentially what it will, to make it shareable, inside of Stackbit, we can create a new cloud. It will create a new cloud project to point to the GitHub URL, and it's super user friendly to do. Whether you are, a developer or marketer, your marketers could do it. For example, like you could, as a developer, you'd be like, "Hey, here's the link to this repository. I know you want access to it. I installed Stackbit CLI, and I essentially installed 2 dependencies and added a config file. So then they can go take this. You push it. They can take this URL and put it into Stackbit. And then what will happen is Stackbit will essentially create a container, and the container basically handles everything we were doing, but in a hosted environment. So it's, once again, it's not a public URL, but it's a URL that other collaborators can be invited to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And for someone who's a content creator, they wouldn't necessarily need to use Stackbit at all if they went into Contentful. Like, I just made a change in Contentful and it did live update here. So like if you right now were to go into Contentful and make a change, my dev environment would update with that change, right?
Correct. Yes. It's so
very cool.
So it's working that way right now. But you can, going through, when you push these changes, you don't even need to go into Contentful. Like it's literally just like your marketers can come in here and make your changes. And I say marketers, but as I mentioned, honestly, anyone who wants to make smaller, like, sorry,
Right.
not smaller, but anyone who wants to make content related changes. You don't need to, go through that whole process. So let's keep on going here.
Let's do it.
And we see that we're getting this message up top about, configuring configuring your models. So still in the config file.
Okay.
Let's go, because you see, oh, sorry, Jason. Yeah, stay in here. I keep on flipping back and forth. You can see after actually this line 14, we're going to let Stackbit know, I guess, essentially let Stackbit know about our models. And what this does with model extensions is it tells Stackbit what pages are going to come in. So if you do camel case model extensions.
Oh, whoops. Got ahead of myself. Model extensions.
Model extensions.
Okay.
And then we do create an array with an object inside of it.
Okay.
And then we're going to give it some different. So the first one is name. And it's going to be page. And I can show you afterwards. We can go back into Contentful. Oh, lowercase.
Lowercase. So we're whoops. We are currently mapping in Contentful the types, like the content types. And so
correct. Yes, exactly.
Got it.
If you go into info, yes, content type ID page. So you see that's where this is coming from.
Got it. Okay, so we get our content type is the ID is a page, and we are telling Stackbit, I assume the next thing we're going to do is tell it to use this as like the page level URLs.
Yes, we are doing that. We're also going to do, sorry, I'm the next one we're doing is type, which is page as well, because that's actually going through, the naming's a little confusing. So the name page is because the sorry, let me take a step back. The type is page, but what this type is here, like type page as well, is because Stackbit offers 3 different, I keep on using the word type a lot, but 3 different types. So we have page, we have data, and we have object. So these 3 model types. So for page, of course, it represents, a page, like a blog site that has different post models for individual blog posts. Whereas for data, which we're not going to use in this example, but data is more so content objects, which are either standalone or can be accessed globally. And then there also is one for objects, which is more so around repeatable content that is embedded in another model. So
gotcha.
The page, though, page type is a very standard one, especially when we're doing this for the purpose of creating some new pages. So yes, you are correct that the next one is regarding the URL. So type in URL path camel case.
Okay.
And then we're going to do 2 single quotes / curly brackets, and then inside of there is we're going to pass in slug. And slug is essentially, we're just doing some variable interpolation. So it's a field that exists on the page model in Contentful. If you go to page, there should be the ID there. Yes. So this can be, when we're just passing in slug, what this will allow us to do is any pages that are coming in from Contentful with different slugs, it will show, we can access those.
So this is the homepage going to cause problems? Because like this one here, the slug is concept / how it works. And then the homepage is /. And this would result in the URL path being a double /, or it's going to fix that for us?
It's whatever comes in. It's going to fix that for us. There is in Contentful I don't know. There is field ID, which is equal to slug for that. But for some reason, when you were there, I didn't see it, of course. Maybe if you go to info, field ID.
I'm sure it's in here somewhere. I haven't used Contentful in a while, so I can't remember how they do the
I was tinkering
field
around
stuff.
yesterday with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but regardless, it's always slug. It's whatever is being passed in, and we can, if you save that file and then navigate back to, perfect. There we go. You can see once again, you didn't need to refresh or anything. And now at the top, you can see if you actually exit out of this and go to the drop down at the top where it says, yep. So you can see there all our pages now are. Yeah.
That's
And
slick.
then the really cool thing too is, I know. I get really excited about it. I just think it's pretty handy because once again, like if we go back to this example that we were speaking about earlier with, content editors or whomever coming in and oftentimes being like, hey, I need this new page created, like this new blog post or whatever. It's, yes, you can do that once again, many different ways, but it's a one-stop shop, I think the saying is. It's one place where you can do everything. So you can add a new page and whatnot. And then also too, you can see on the left-hand side that we now have enabled the pencil icon, which was grayed out up until this point.
Oh, cool.
Right
So
there,
now we get the actual page content.
Exactly. So if you want to make changes to that title, for example.
Yeah.
Welcome to Acme Corp. Mark.
And now we're able to just kind of live update the thing.
Exactly. So that's really cool. And then another thing too, I want to highlight a few things here. I mean, if you scroll down in this, if you scroll down, you can see the different sections where you can literally rearrange the sections right here as well. You can also add sections and whatnot, which we can cover in a bit here, but yeah, move them around.
Wow.
And just wait for it to, there you go. So you can see it.
So this
So
is,
it's
I mean, this is super
easy
handy.
now
Like
for
you can
your,
just dive right in here and cause all the changes you want to get made. And I think what's really interesting and I think something important to call out here is like, Contentful is not aware that Stackbit exists. And Next.js is not aware that Stackbit exists. So we've basically like added this layer on top. We haven't modified our code and we haven't modified our data model. We just made it easier for the things to work together, which is way different from the experiences I've had with other kind of visual editors.
Exactly. And the thing is too, Jason, is right now, I know we're working through this and it takes some time to work through it, but I want to all we have literally done. Like, I'm not trying to sound like a broken record, but I just think the power of it when you really think of it. All we have done, what have we done? We've installed the CLI. We created a config file, which, the config file is in our docs. So you essentially can copy the structure of it and then modify it. And what else have we done? We've added in the model extensions, and that's kind of it to allow for all of this flexibility now to occur.
Yeah, that's pretty slick.
Which is pretty cool. So yeah, so if you go back for a second here to the site. So as we kind of spoke about before, you can now edit content from the pencil icon or create new pages, but I want to take it one step further. And this kind of depends on how flexible you want your visual editor to be, which once again is something that's very powerful about Stackbit is we're not here to tell you what to do. If Stackbit stops existing tomorrow, your site is not affected. Obviously, you don't have the visual editor aspect anymore, but it's still running in production. Nothing is affected, which is really cool in my opinion. But one thing that, as I keep on mentioning, I'm a visual learner and I like to be visual, is I want to talk a little bit about my favorite part, which is annotation. So this is really cool, and I'll tell kind of a little story here. A lot of times with content changes, say it's even copy. So the last company I was at, well, actually it was IBM, and I was working on the consulting sides for a very large airline. And you would think you think when you think big companies that the processes are like, well, sometimes you think there must be super advanced, and other times they're very slow, right? But a lot of times what would happen is this copy would need to be changed, like symbol copy. So say the welcome to Acme Corp friends, right? And it would need to be changed. So the marketing team would write a ticket that this needs to be changed and whatnot, and we want it longer and whatnot. So then, it's assigned to different developers, and no matter how senior or junior you are, the work needs to get done. So you get them. And so you make these changes, and then you have to take screenshots. This is how it would operate. We take screenshots of the text and send them back to the design team and say, hey, do you like this and whatnot? And oftentimes they'd be like, okay, we need to update the text to be longer or shorter based on how it looked visually. Obviously, it can be changed with CSS and whatnot, but sometimes they just wanted a quick fix and whatnot. So this is a great way, which we're going to dive into, to see, like, to be able to edit. We call it editing on the glass, but edit inline. So if we go back into our code base here.
Edit on the glass sounds like sci-fi.
I know it sounds really, really high tech. And we're going to let's make some changes into our heading. So let's go, if you can search up heading.tsx, please.
I guess I could have done, I should get better at using the VS Code search.
And then from here, if we scroll down, so this is our heading component, and I'll show you in a sec here where it's used throughout the page. But while we're here, I want to talk about two different annotations that you can add to your elements, and it doesn't affect your code or your workflow really, or anything like that, in the sense of they're pretty short and simple. So the first one is data. It's called data SB object ID, and we're going to add that on line 18 at the end of, I don't know why, but I always like to add at the end, right after, yes, ID. So data SB dash object dash ID.
Okay.
And then this is going to be 2 curly brackets.
Double curlies?
And okay. And no, sorry, I didn't see that there. And then props dot underscore ID. And I'll show you where this ID is coming from as well. But essentially, the object ID's job that we just added in here is to provide context for the record in Contentful that's being edited. So it is set to the value of the unique ID of the record in the content source. So it's, once again, kind of, you'll really get the idea when we go back into the site and we can inspect this.
Mm-hmm. Should I do that now?
So if you save that now, and yep, you can save it, go there. And then if you go inspect, we can look at where it's coming from in Contentful too, but if we want to start here, we can go inspect. And then click on,
see which
sorry,
one's,
your
which one's
screen's
a heading?
really
Is it
small
this?
for me, so I'm just. It should be that one, yes. Or actually go into, there's a ton that use it in how it works. If you go into that under concepts on the left.
Into how it works. And okay, here we go. Here's a bunch of them.
Scroll down. Yes,
ooh, wait,
so you see
something's
now,
happening.
This is all the same component, and
everybody see that?
Yeah. So you can see on these
okay, now if I click this,
so wherever it's being used, now we have it. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, you can think of it as so yeah, you can make some changes there as well.
Very slick.
And then 2, if you want, open up Contentful. It's a shortcut to Contentful. where the big C is, just to show you again where this ID is coming from. Then you go info, and then we can see it right there, entry ID.
And so what we've done,
yeah,
just to
that is.
recap, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jason.
So to recap, we have the first layer is that you tell Stackbit where your Contentful install is, and with no other config, just telling it where Contentful is, it gives you your site in the main window with a little Chrome around it that gives you the ability to look at your content model in Contentful right next to your site on the screen. And that way you can, open up your content management and your code in one window, which is great. For an extra config where you map your pages to the slugs, you then tell Stackbit where the pages are, so you can navigate through the pages and create pages and all those things, which is great. And then one step further, you can add this data SB object ID and pass in the Contentful object ID, which is basically any one of these Contentful objects. You can pass in the entry ID, and that allows us to then make it clickable in the UI. So this is very slick with how friendly that is to use. And it's nice because, again, all of this is being done with right now exactly one change to our code, which is to give a reference as a data attribute, which is not going to change the code, or to change the behavior of the app, I should say. We add a data attribute, and then everything else is just a layer sitting on top that doesn't ship to production. It's not modifying our source code. It's not modifying our CMS. It's just a way to do a visual bridge between the two.
Exactly. Yes. Jason, you're so good at explaining. I don't want you to take my job. You do too good at explaining it. All right, so let's take this one step further, though, because right now, we're telling Stackbit where the entire record of the content source is, right? The unique idea of this sharing the idea of this for the entire record. So we can do this one. I want to show you one more thing here. So if you go back into your code base in the same file, and then we're going to use a very similar annotation, but we're actually going to go into the span on line 19, into the first tag there.
Okay.
Perfect, right after class name. And we're going to use something called field path. So this is data SB field dash path. And this is going to, as you can see here, it's kind of hinting we're passing in the body. So make it equal to body in a string.
Okay.
Perfect. And so what this is doing, it's the field path is the ID of the field. So, or sometimes called the name in the content source. So in this case, body. So if you go back in here now.
I didn't need to refresh that, did I? Okay, let me go to how it works.
No, you didn't. Yeah.
Oh, now it shows me text.
And then you can see here. Yes, and you can edit. Don't even click on the pencil.
Okay. So I just come
up
here,
just
I click.
Edit directly, like I said. Yeah.
Oh, that's
exactly.
slick.
So now you can even close that side panel. And now your editors can see visually, like with even out the side panel, being able to use that. So let's change this some text here. And then in our smaller component that we're playing around with, but let's save this as a preset now. So hover over it again, but not anyone that you've changed, but go one step, hover over the entire component, so including where it says depreciated.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, so let's do the heading. There we go. Now we're back. So yeah, it would be visually, I think, better if it was a bigger component, but go save as preset.
Okay.
And click there. And then we can give this a name, just say Jason's heading or whatever you want to call it.
And then we could create
and
a
we can give it a
category.
and
Okay.
save. So we just saved this preset, but actually, sorry, we're gonna have to go back into our code quickly here because I want to show you something cool.
Okay.
So go back into our code into the card grid.
Card grid.
So yeah, card grid. Where is it there? Yeah. And then on the parent div on line 6 here, let's do another data SB object ID, pass in props._ID again.
Okay.
Get that ID. And so then now when we go back on the home page, sorry, I'm taking you around the
No, all
block
good.
here. Yep.
We're learning a lot here. So I
and
need
then
to
just
get. Oh, I need to X out of that. Got it.
click
Okay,
on
so
the
let's
X
go to the home page.
right there. And then, all right, now when we scroll down, and then scroll, yeah, so now we see we have, of course, more, because we just added that data SB object. So if you click on the plus button, on that one, yeah, the plus button there, if you hover over it. So right above developer guides.
I can't. Oh no, we need padding.
Here we go. Maybe just click on inside there for a sec. Sure.
Okay.
Then go create new.
Oh, I had to click on it. I understand. I thought I had to
There we
hover, but I clicked and now I can do a thing.
And then, yeah, create new.
Okay.
Create
Oh.
new. And then we can see here the heading that we just saved is there. So you can think, though, how this can become really interesting when you're saving larger components. Like, say you have a component that has an image and text in it that you want to reuse for a different blog post or different parts of your documentation, how this becomes so so powerful so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it all just kind of it happens very fast, right? Like, and this is what I think is so cool about this is like people are saying, well, yeah, but WordPress can do this, Sanity can do this, and I think the important thing to note here is that it can if you're using WordPress, if you're using Sanity. This would work with, like, we're using it with Contentful. We could use it with Sanity as well. We could use it with WordPress as well, I would assume. You can, so basically any structured data source, you could use it with your database with no CMS at all. And then it sounds like you said that one of your team put together a Figma API demo. So the thing that's nice here is that you could theoretically, like, if you had a team where your marketing blog is run in WordPress, your marketing homepage is powered by Contentful or Sanity, and your docs are powered by Markdown, you could have the same visual editing experience across the whole site because you can plug in all three of those content sources. And that's pretty dang cool.
Exactly. And you got to, like, yes, going back to, WordPress, I'm kind of repeating what you're saying, but WordPress or these other things, but you're locked into so many degrees with these platforms. And as you're mentioning, like, you're not locked in with Stackbit, which I think is what, I mean, I don't know, myself and any developer I speak to, like, that's a huge benefit, like the freedom and flexibility it brings for you. I don't want to be locked in or tied to something that, as my company continues to grow and scale, I have to pay so much money to store all this content here. Like, going back to my example I mentioned earlier about breaking down the presentation and data layer, like, when you start thinking about it from a standpoint of scaling, like, and scalability and how you can scale sites and working, as your team grows and whatnot, it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, and I think it's, the conversation too is about, like, who is really going to benefit from something like this. And I can imagine somebody saying, like, but isn't this like a lot of tooling? But the flip side is, like, when I was at IBM, even when I was at Netlify, which is a much smaller company, we had lots of teams with lots of different needs, and they didn't want to use the same tools. And so we saw a lot of, like, there was a lot of issues of, should we force the docs team to use sanity because that's what the marketing team standardized on for netlify.com? And should we, should we try to force the DX team to, to write everything in this tool or that tool? And what we found was that like each team was more productive using a different tool. And because we were a larger team, it really matters. Like if you've got a team of 10 people and they're 10% slower because of being forced to use Markdown when they're not GitHub experts, that's a significant amount of waste, right? Of them spending all their time trying to, that
Exactly.
10% loss is huge. And, 10 people with a 10% loss is a whole person whose salary is wasted on an average year, right? So it's very critical that you find ways to make people productive. And so when you are making those trade-offs, finding tools that allow people to use the tools quickly. And the other thing too is if you've got people who don't want to use Markdown and they want a visual editor, if you put something like Stackbit on top of Markdown, or if you've got a DX team that doesn't want to log into Contentful, but they're willing to use a visual editor because they're already using it for the docs or something, suddenly you're starting to bring teams together and you're breaking down those barriers between how teams collaborate and whether or not they're willing to collaborate, whether or not they feel confident going in and making a suggested change, any of those things that it just starts to save time. And so it's always a trade-off between like how much tooling are we going to add, how much re-education are we going to do, how hard are we willing to fight against people's natural preferences, because ultimately we're just trying to get people to work in a way that they want to work so that they're enjoying it, because when people enjoy their work, they do more and better work. And also, how do we minimize the amount of time it takes for somebody to get these tasks done? Because, editing is not the value, right? Like writing the content was the value. Putting it into the CMS should be as close to instantaneous as possible. And if there's a lot of friction involved in that, you're going to end up with wasted time. You're going to end up with people who don't want to follow through to the last 10% because they don't want to actually wrestle the CMS to edit. And all of that leads to waste, to slowdowns, to slower shipping. And at that point, it's worth considering, can we solve some of these problems with tooling? The answer is not always yes, but sometimes, especially when you've got, I would say, a composable setup where you've got lots and lots of different tools that different teams want to use, finding a good abstraction over all those tools can be a huge benefit for a team's productivity.
Exactly. And on that note too, if anyone is interested in playing around with the project that we worked on today, I don't know, I'm not a major Twitch user, Jason, but there is a command they can run to start using it. How is it best that I share that?
To start using Stackbit?
This project, yeah, noticed, and this specific project as well. They can run npx create Stackbit app at latest example documentation, and it will essentially produce for you a fully annotated project. You just need to
npx
configure
create
Contentful.
Stackbit app at latest, and what was the rest of it?
And space, and then dash example, space
Example
documentation. Just in case anyone wants to play around with this specific project that already has all of the bells and whistles in it, so you can, continue building on it and tinkering with it.
All right, I'm going to put this into put it into my terminal up here as well. So for anybody who's not looking at the Twitch chat, you can see that there. Okay, well, that I think is, and this is not as far as we can go with this, but it's as far as we have time to go today. So for folks who want to learn more, what would you recommend is the right next step for somebody who wants to dig in with Stackbit? I'm going to drop the site one more time.
Definitely go to our docs. In our docs, for sure. Yeah, in our docs, there's examples of how to get started, like getting started examples. And then to myself and a few other team members are always active in our Discord, which is linked at the bottom of the website as well. So you can always, where is Discord? Maybe I spoke too soon. Community.
Discord.
There we go, Discord. Yeah, so we're always in there as well. So, even after this live, I'll be active in there if anyone has any further questions or wants to come say hi and learn more. But yeah, we're always building fun things and tinkering around. So come say hi.
And then Joe from your team posted Stackbit themes. I'm going to repost that so it shows up in the show notes. Lots of good stuff there to get you started. And Tiff, I'm going to send everybody to your website, which has links to all of your different social media platforms. So everybody make sure you go and follow Tiff. And with that, I am going to give one more shout out to our captioning. We've got Rachel from White Coat Captioning here today. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being here. It means a lot to me. That is made possible through the support of our sponsors, Netlify, NX, New Relic, Pluralsight, all kicking in to make this show more accessible to more people. And while you're checking out things on the site, make sure you go and look at the schedule because we've got a great schedule coming up. Next week is going to be New Relic Observability Week. So New Relic is a sponsor of the show. We are working together on 4 straight days of streams to go into all the reasons that you will benefit from and why it's maybe worth finally learning what the heck observability means if you're working on the web. So that's going to be a whole lot of fun. And then we have a whole bunch of fun stuff coming up after that. We're going to have Arian on. We're going to talk about how we can share state between frameworks. That's going to be really fun, a good little nerdy deep dive. Kevin Winnery is going to show us how to build a mobile app using Retool. So even if you don't know how to write mobile code, you can build an internal mobile app. It's going to be really fun. We're going to be like scanning barcodes with phones and things. It sounds wild. I'm excited to see how it all works. Yeah, it's going to be great. So make sure you mark your calendar, subscribe on Twitch, Twitter, all those places. Tiff, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Any parting words for the chat?
No, thank you so much. I'll try going on camera for a sec here and see if it doesn't freeze for a hot sec. But no, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I'm, looking forward to seeing your other ones. I love watching your stream. So thanks for having me on it.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. All right, chat. As always, thanks for hanging out with us today. We will see you all next time. Bye.